minutes?
Maybe 15.
They give it.
Depends on the question.
They wanted to.
Okay.
No,
He's
it's not
just-
out.
Nancy made.
Kathy.
Her 20, and then they gave her 10. They upped it like twice.
Well, we can't get her first.
Everybody's coming fashionably late.
We're gonna do, he's gonna talk first, and back to the scripture.
That was an important thing here, so I don't think it's so important. Can I get a water? Water. Water. Oh, you're not the.
Joe, you gotta stay for a while and talk for
I'll go find it.
You gotta wait till we get so we have to be heard.
I've never been mistaken.
She thought you were a waitress.
I know.
And we're in a meeting, which meeting? We're meeting right now. Is there anything you need? You already talked about anything else? Okay, all right, bye. I don't know, bye.
We're going to be starting here momentarily.
We all do this.
That's recording.
It's all.
That's recording. Darren, that's recording.
Okay. What is it?
I need to talk to you something now about this stuff.
Let's do it after this meeting. Get started.
Candy.
Okay. Testing. Okay, thanks for coming today. And this is, March the 4th, 2025. We're gonna start first with a prayer. And Kathy, would you like to give our opening prayer? Okay.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time that we had together to learn, to fellowship, and to love each other. Help us to absorb the information that you want us to absorb, and help us to do your will in all that we do. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Let it be done.
Okay.
Amen.
We're gonna, Leonard's here briefly, and we're just back to you. Okay, our next guest will be Leonard from California. And he talked to me briefly and said that Texas is gonna have a program now for the bottles and what cans, both of them. Proposed. So he's gonna give us an update. About 10 minutes roughly. We're gonna get some scriptures quickly, and then Dr. Joe, and then we're gonna have Constantine here to that.
Hello, guys. I was not here last week because I had lunch with a judge who I met at a Tarrant County Republicans group, and he seemed to show insight into regulation. So we had lunch, and then that afternoon I spoke with a partner of Vivek Ramaswamy, who had published a book, and I read the book, and he talked about the book and AB, Anheuser-Busch, and things like that. Now I'm here because of Steve, and Steve and I met at Raphael Cruz Bible study, and that didn't happen last week, so it allowed me to spend 2 days over at the NRB, National Religious Broadcasters Convention, at the Gaylord in Great Rock. And I made a lot of interesting connections and talked to a lot of people. One of the things I did, though, is I made a sign. I had a sign 2 days. I remade the sign. This was the remake. But the first thing I would talk to people about is they would walk past, and I could tell who they were because they had the badges on, was I wanted a paradigm shift. That progressives make everything progressively worse. And it's easy to point things out. Okay. And a whole bunch of people walked by and said, yeah, I believe in that, I believe in that. Well, I want people talking about progressives make everything progressively worse. That's going to create a paradigm shift in the country. Because you go back, I remember Hillary Clinton saying, I'm a modern progressive. Well, you're still a progressive and you still make everything worse. From sex changes in Costa Rica to stupid, what is it, Sesame Street in Iraq. We're spending a lot of money doing a lot of stupid things. And that's the mission of the progressives, to bankrupt us. It's one of the missions, to bankrupt us. And then there's a guy on Zelle who's sitting next to Dennis Prager. I came across it on YouTube. He said, fix California and you can fix the country. I believe that. That's one of the reasons I was over at NRD. So, whew, we got all that done. This weekend, a guy in California sent me a text message, and it's got information on Texas introducing a bottle bill here, a recycling bill for bottles and cans. That's my wheelhouse. And in California, I studied every way that it cuts you off from your constitutional rights and destroys people's lives. What's up?
What does it cost to recycle things?
It doesn't matter.
No.
No, I'm not going there now. I only have 10 minutes. We're not going there. Okay, so I get a copy of the bill and I look it over. So what's in some of the bill? The bill has a recycling program based on redemption. That's California, okay? It is you pay the money, you get it back, you redeem. And we have a redeemer, don't we? It kind of ties in. Then it had an organization created to oversee the money that's collected. And that's called an extended producer responsibility program. Basically, it's a committee. Now, most of you people are older. Do you remember years ago when fax machines started coming into use and people would send jokes off the fax machine? You come in the morning, you had 7 or 8 jokes all run out of paper and everything. There was one that I always liked. It was the camel. It was a bastardized camel, and it was a horse created by a committee. Well, that's what extended producer responsibility is. It's a committee that's supposed to run things that will not work well, I guarantee.
Who appointed them?
Pardon me?
Who's deciding they get to do it? Who approved them?
No, this is a bill.
Yeah.
This is proposed.
Okay.
And, you know, I've worked with so many people over the years that don't understand the election process, the bill process, the lawmaking process, and my focus is rule making, okay? We have more rules and regulation than we have laws, and those were created by agencies, by bureaucracies, faster than we can count them. And if you don't control the process, you have a problem. The judge I had lunch with last week referenced a book, $50 book, man. And it's not inaudible, and that's the way I consume books these days. And it was basically, is administrative law constitutional? And I agree, it's not. But can we make it constitutional? That's kind of where I'm at. I have some thoughts, ideas. Otherwise, regulation isn't good. It is not good. It creates too many problems. So now we have two proposed laws. One is Senator Johnson for the bottle bill. They're identical verbiage, okay? Johnson from Dallas area, Lujan from San Antonio area. So yesterday I called up their offices. Where's the language come from? Don't know. Well, how come it's the same as Johnson? I don't know. So these are kids in the office. Somebody's gotten to the legislator and he's put the bill in, and now we're going to see what happens to it. It's only about 8 pages. That means it's going to change a whole bunch. But it's got this extended producer responsibility issue, and it's got redemption in it, and it's going to be overseen and advised by an organization that's created by the Texas Recycling Council or something like this, as well as the waste haulers. Anybody in the trash business here? Let me tell you one thing. People in the trash business at the top, they're evil. okay? They will screw you 10 ways to kingdom come and take your money doing what?
They're asking us to speak up into the mic, they can't hear you.
Okay, I gotta get
It's-
closer.
Yeah.
We're doing a YouTube video. It's live streaming,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they can't hear you.
Oh, I see, okay. So, anyway, I've, talked with both legislators' offices. My Senator Birdwell is chair of the, Natural Resources Committee in the Senate. That's the one that's gonna hear this. So I talked to his ledge guy. He turned me over to the, there's a committee, Natural Resources Committee. They have their own staff. So I talked to the guy at that staff. So I've gotten a whole lot done. I need to talk to one more guy at the, House Committee level and get them prepared. I know this stuff inside and out. They need my help, but the question is, we have a bottom-up type of government. We're supposed to bring our skills and our knowledge up and present it to our legislators. Will they be receptive? Number 11, folks, number 11. Keep you posted as to what's happening. One thing, Steve, were you at the Bible study when, Raphael brought up, the book, I Have Met the Enemy and He Is Us?
I don't recall.
Well, I told him,
There's quite a few of
at
them.
the time, I said, I got the book. The book is a cartoon book, Pogo. And it says, we have met the enemy and he is us. I had a buddy in the army in Korea, and he was into Pogo. He got me into Korea, or into Pogo, and when I got out, I got this book. And this book has affected my life significantly, because as I look at bureaucrats, as I look at people in enforcement in California over the bottle bill, over recyclers, they are the enemy, and they is us. We put them there, we gotta have oversight on them, we gotta watch them like a hawk, because I think it's, MSNBC has the, American Greed show. It's not American greed, it's human nature. And I've seen that greed in bureaucrats to fulfill themselves and not to fulfill the people that they should be working for. So, we wanna fix this world, we gotta fix regulation. That's one of the reasons I'm trying to get hooked into Doge, why I talked to Ramaswamy's partner. None of those went all that well, but it's not dead. I'm still gonna work and see what I can do to get where I need to go. And, if we can fix the way we regulate, the way we create the regulation, we can make this a pretty good country.
All right. When is that bill gonna be introduced for a vote?
They're both introduced. One is SB 728, and the other one I think is HB 2048. That's the Lujan bill. If you want, I'll send you the numbers to make sure. But these things are going to proceed. Now, last year, anybody know who Trammell Pro is?
Who?
Trammell Pro?
Oh, gosh, yeah, he passed away, but he was very big in real estate in Dallas.
Or I think it's a junior still
Okay.
around. And he's got his own environmental organization called Earth X. And they had a big conference here last year, and Gavin Newsom came, and some of the directors of the departments that I deal with, they came to tout the California bottle bill. And then there's a think tank down in Austin, TCRRI or something like that. There's a guy by the name of Wolf. He wrote an article about the container recycling program because of that conference. And he got it all wrong. I tried to contact him. I called him down there. He's never called me back. Now we're gonna see what pressure we can put on him to update his inaccurate information, because Dan Patrick does sit on the board of that organization, and maybe that'll help me. But Texas is susceptible to the same problems that California is. We've got to be alert. We've got to be prepared, and can't let it happen here.
Sounds like they're coming over here, same bill, same
Well, it is different here. It is different because,
But the bill is a little bit different in California.
well,
As far as what they're wanting to do.
let's not get into the minutia, okay? The bottom line is it starts with a redemption. Okay, you pay it out, you get it back. Now, how that's gonna happen, they've got projected in the bill that this organization is going to oversee the construction of recycling centers with this money that's collected from everybody who buys containers. That's real iffy in my background, my perspective. I'd be highly suspicious of what they're gonna come out with. But trust me, the left has been planning this for a long time. And I spoke to the president of Texas area recyclers, and she said, oh, they'll never get one here. And that just shows how naive the associations are.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thanks for the update. Okay, Steve, you ready for scriptures?
Today is March the 4th, so we'll begin Proverbs 4. Hear my children, the instructions of my father. Give attention to know understanding. So I give you good doctrine. Do not forsake my law. When I was my father's son, tender and the only one beside my mother, he also taught me and said to me, at your heart retain my word, keep my commandments, and live. Get wisdom, get understanding. Do not forget or turn away from the words of my mouth. Do not forsake her, and she will preserve you. Love her, and she will keep you. Wisdom is a physical thing, therefore, get wisdom. And in all thy getting, get understanding. Exalt her, and she will promote you. She will bring you honor when you embrace her. She will place on your head a cordon of grace. The crown of glory she will deliver to you. Hear, my son, and receive my saying. And the years of your life will be many. I have taught you in the way of wisdom. I have led you in the right path. When you walk, your steps will not be hindered. When you run, you will not stumble. Take firm hold of instructions and do not let go. Keep her, for she is your life. Do not enter the path of the wicked, and do not walk in the way of evil. Avoid it. Do not travel on it. Turn away from it and pass on. For they do not sleep unless they have done evil, and their sleep is taken away unless they make someone fall. For they eat the bread of wickedness and drink the wine of violence. But the path of the just is like a shining sun that shines ever brighter into the perfect day. The way of the wicked is like darkness. They do not know what makes them stumble. My son, give attention to my words. Incline your ear to my saying. Do not let them depart from your eyes. Keep them in the midst of your heart. For they are life to those who find them, health to all your flesh. Keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it springs life. Put away from you a deceitful mouth, and preserve lips far from you. Reverse lips far from you. Let your eyes look straight ahead, and your eyelids look right before you. Ponder the path of your feet, and let all your ways be established. Do not turn to the right or to the left. Remove your foot from evil. And be today's prophet. Praise the Lord.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Now, Dr. Joe, we'd like to hear from you about some of the things that are going on in our court system.
Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, testing. Okay, as we all know, the courts in the United States are different than other courts in other parts of the world, insofar as they're impeccably honest at all times. They're conducted within the law, always in the law, and we can trust them completely, right? Well, here's a new ruling from the Department of Justice that just came out, and I will read it to you.
Closer to the mic.
Okay, closer to the mic.
There you go.
United States Department of Justice Officer, the Solicitor General, Pennsylvania, February 20. Multi-layer restrictions on the removal of administrative law judges declared unconstitutional. The Department of Justice has formally determined that multiple layers of removal restrictions violate the Constitution. The Department will no longer defend these restrictions in court and has affirmed this position in ongoing litigation. Constitutional violations and judicial overreach in Free Enterprise Fund versus PCA OB 2010, the Supreme Court ruled that multi-layer protection from removal violates Article 2 by unlawfully restricting the President's executive authority. The ruling clarified that the President must not be restricted in his ability to remove executive officers, including inferior officers such as administrative law judges. Further, statutory provisions restricting the President's ability to remove principal officers who are in turn blocked from removing inferior officers are unconstitutional. The Department of Justice has determined that administrative law judges operating under these unlawful protections lack any valid judicial standing.
Wow. That was February the 20th of this year?
Yeah. Implications. It's going to be all administrative law judges, right? Not just federal.
So number one, they're not gonna defend them anymore,
Right.
and number two, they're actually gonna go after them.
That sounds good to me.
Yeah, no shit.
All right.
What about
I will answer all of you. I will answer all of your questions in due time. I ask you to apply a little patience.
all right.
Raise your right hand. All right, implications in Trump's Article 2. He can immediately terminate all unlawful administrative law judges operating in federal tribunals. He can override unconstitutional restrictions that hinder executive authority. He can restore full due process protection for the American people by removing unlawful administrative courts. Well, if they can do it at the federal level, are administrative courts at the state level any less illegitimate?
No, they're all federal, actually.
All right, fine. Justice Neil Gorsuch has extensively criticized the use of unconstitutional administrative proceedings that bypass the constitutional right to a jury trial.
Yes.
And unlawfully strip people of their property without due process. He has stated government agencies have been acting as judge, jury, and executioner without any lawful authority, bar guild control, and fraudulent securities. The Department of Justice has further identified the unlawful influence of private bar guild members. Let me repeat that. The Department of Justice has further identified the unlawful influence of private bar guild members controlling these corporate tribunals, which are operating under statutory fraud rather than constitutional law, engaged in securities trading via court registry investment systems.
Wow. Sounds like
I love it.
No
And
shit.
facilitating land title fraud through the land registries, Westpac, and others. The Clearfield Doctrine, sound familiar?
yeah.
Confirms that when government agencies trade securities, when they ask for what? Federal Reserve notes. They forfeit their sovereign immunity and become private entities engaging in commerce. Unlawful administrative courts are operating as for-profit corporate entities in direct violation of the Constitution's separation of powers, the right to due process and trial by jury, federal law prohibiting unauthorized securities trading. The President must now do these findings. Trump holds full authority under Article 2 to dissolve unconstitutional administrative courts, to fire administrative law judges operating without constitutional standing, to shut down unlawful securities trading schemes, to restore due process, property rights, and financial justice to the people. The NAACC and other corrupt commissions have failed to investigate these systemic violations. The Department of Justice calls for immediate corrective action to dismantle this unlawful system. Next step, the Department of Justice will no longer defend these unconstitutional restrictions in court and reaffirms that the Department of Justice affirms that administrative law judges have no lawful judicial standing. They also say President Trump has the authority to dissolve these administrative courts immediately, and that all fraudulent securities trading and land registry fraud must be exposed and prosecuted. For further inquiries, contact Department of Justice or Chief Justice Neil Gorsuch.
Wow.
Woo-hoo!
All right.
It sounds like some
It's like
heads
the
are
whole-
gonna roll,
Yeah, no
Yeah.
shit, eh?
you know?
Yeah, right. There's more. Gorsuch, he is repeatedly exposing unlawful practices of administrative laws, courts, and bar-led systems. His critiques emphasize the need for constitutional adherence and the rejection of statutory overreach. And he says, the Sixth Amendment right to a trial by jury is incorporated against the states under the 14th Amendment, and it requires a unanimous verdict to convict the defendant of a serious offense. In his critique of administrative overreach, Gorsuch emphasized the dangers of agencies acting as both prosecutors and judges. Today, he noted, the court places a tombstone on the chevron that no one can miss. In doing so, the court returns judgments to the interpreted rules that have guided federal courts since the nation's founding. Justice Gorsuch further highlighted that bar members as creatures of statute. Let me say that again. Bar members as creatures of statutes cannot practice law or simultaneously act as witnesses and attorneys. Their authority is limited to corporate rules and does not extend to lawful reports of record. Their authority is limited to corporate rules and does not extend to lawful courts of record. Gorsuch further says, Bar Member Chief Justice demands that bar agents be my immediate demand, wish, and order that you restore that all has been unlawfully taken without constitutionally mandated due process. Justice Gorsuch says, please take notice that as agency workers, state judges, presiding judges, state legislatures, that you are bound to the Constitution that you have all sworn to uphold, and from this time forward, please be advised that taking children, cars, houses, weapons, property without a trial by jury in a court of record following the course of the common law is unlawful. Please also take notice that attorneys who don't have their name on the line as they are not in positions of service and contract with the people, presenting you with the idea that it's acceptable to trample on the people's rights by device or artifice does not in any way remove your responsibility for your wrongdoings. Furthermore, there is an element of wrong being committed when you are working in a federal program and make money outside of your normal salary for carrying out the functions of that program, leaving one with unclean hands on top of taking property or rights from the people without right. All past cases that bypass the common law are unlawful. I need to say that again. All past cases that bypass the common law are unlawful. There is my immediate demand, wish, and order that you would restore all that has been unlawfully taken without constitutionally mandated due process, and notify all those who are harmed, or you agree that any wrong that is done in this regard in the future, or that has not been corrected from past trespasses, is done purposely with full knowledge, intent, and malice, and will be recognized as such by the people whom you swore to preserve and protect. This notice is sent to you in the peace and love of Jesus Christ, that you may repent and do works worthy of the same. Maxim, judicial notice is a form of evidence. Judicial notice is a form of evidence. I rest my case.
That's good.
Was any of this, make a comment. Only one,
That's great.
isn't it?
That speaks for itself.
They couldn't have written it better.
So, so
Court ruling?
they can,
No, it's a Solicitor General decision.
How can you get a copy of that?
Yeah.
The copies are 25.
Or free online?
I got a quarter.
where did you find that, Joe?
Where did I find it?
Yeah.
Someone sent it to me.
It was posted.
I was doing diligent research in that.
Well, no, I'm just saying, dude, I wanna, can you send me a link to it, please?
I'll do better and I'll send you a whole chain. Chains are cheap. You want galvanized or what do you want?
Okay, so what, I have a question.
Hallelujah.
They mentioned,
Freedom is coming. Justice
Okay.
is coming.
so when, a few months ago, you know, when they decided the Chevron case,
Right.
that basically neutered the administrative state.
Well,
Right.
it just paid for their gender reassignment. That's all.
So your problem, this is basically, they're saying what they're gonna do is that the administrative court is going away and basically they're all administrative
It
courts.
sounds like,
Basically all administrative courts.
but the president can enforce it now.
Yeah, the president can really enforce it,
That's
but
what we got a backbone now.
I see no, where's our legal
Crazy,
counsel?
man.
I see no reason why we can't enforce it. I see no reason why you can't make an affidavit challenging not only jurisdiction, but whether or not they're, their administrative law, and that's completely unconstitutional. Here's the decision of the Department of Justice. So
What's the date
we
on
can all
that?
go home now.
What's the date on that?
February 20.
Yeah, it,
Let me make a comment. When I read Gorsuch's book, A Republic If You Can Keep It, he hammered
Right.
the separation of powers.
Right.
And going back to fix California, you can fix the country. California has what's called an informal hearing. And I used AI to look it up. And it came in 1985, and right now I'm stopped right there. But supposedly it was a bill that was carried and passed by Maxine Waters. And the informal hearing is all internal. They make they do the police work, they make the accusation, they do the enforcement.
I can't imagine him saying anything. It's completely unconstitutional.
And they have somebody inside the department who is the adjudicator. Oh my, this is gonna have.
He's the adjudicator.
He's the adjudicator too?
I'll buy you a beer. We'll have an informal hearing. That's about as much authority as he has.
So, administrative courts, they said,
Right.
are for,
They're not courts. They're
Administrative
for corporations.
tribunal.
Whatever you want to call them.
Well, they're actually for government employees is what they're for.
Okay, but, okay, so, we all know about the name in all caps. And, the artificial person, the US business, the straw man,
Right.
corporate
Whenever
fiction.
they say, there's a fine associated with this, I want $200 in Federal Reserve notes. They have brought themselves out of governmental service, and they're just simply a corporation.
So corporations can only contract with other corporations, right? So as long as people are going along with the all caps name thinking that's them, right? Then,
That's what Hillary Clinton said was real politics. There's the law and the Constitution, and then there's the real politics, which is whatever you can get away with. That's the real ruling factor. It's whatever they can get away with. And they've been getting away with conducting preposterously unconstitutional courts. The people don't read the Constitution. Most of them can't read their own name. So that's where you're at. But nonetheless, there are guys like Gorsh and what was your full name?
Jason Morgan,
Jason Morgan. What's your real name?
Marlon.
All right, men like him, and we can be proud of, and we'll stand up for what's right. But you do, don't you? Absolutely. And with Nelson. So we the people. A ragtag bunch if there ever was, but nonetheless, we've been charged with the duty, responsibility, and obligation to enforce the laws and pass what is left of our constitutional republic to the next generation.
I think we need to have the sheriff, get the sheriff involved and let him know that it's been done.
Well, unfortunately, the sheriff has gone through gender reassignment surgery and now is no longer any room to enforce anything. But anyways, I will be happy to give this to anybody. If you want a copy of it, I'll email it to you or whatever. And Glenn, I would like your comments, you know. It is kind of self-explanatory, but you explain things better than that.
Well, it's great because they're saying that not only are they unconstitutional, we're not gonna, what they're saying is that, not only are they unconstitutional, that the Solicitor General's not gonna defend them, and they're actually gonna start prosecuting them.
Marvelous, don't they?
Yeah.
That's all I have to say.
And so anything that has to do with common law, or that should have been common law, as in we the people, that my case right now has gone to the Court of Appeals. So, you know, I kind of have hope it goes to the Supreme Court. Because I can see that that's exactly what's happening in my case. Anyway.
So is this just gonna trickle down and it's like, hurry up, we gotta get them, we gotta do this real quick, because they're coming down on us. Has anybody like passed this down to them saying, dude, you're messing up here, dude, you might wanna retire, you might wanna.
You know, it would be nice if, but I don't think they care.
They don't care.
You know, again, what did Washington say? Government is force. It's a dangerous servant and a fearful master. And so the only thing they understand is force. Okay, so when somebody rounds them up and puts them on trial for perjuring their oath, then they'll get the message, and then they'll get their neck stretched. And you stretch a couple necks, and the rest of them get the message. See what I'm saying? Maybe that's what has to happen. I'm really looking forward to seeing some necks stretched over this coronavirus hoax.
Oh, God.
So we'll see what happens.
You know, you want to start your constitutional discussion?
So Nelson, I'll pull up that
We need a
file.
break. First of all, we need a break.
Sure, let's take
Let's take a break.
Let's take a little break.
Okay, we're gonna take a short break.
Here.
Yeah.
Sure. See, this vaccine code to get it up.
I don't usually do it. The other day,
I mean, seriously, that is,
You guys looking?
that means a lot.
Sorry?
You got anybody online?
Oh, yeah. There's, right now, there's 13 people.
Good. And the 78 means someone
That's
just
the total
watching.
views.
They've just gone there.
So some people come and leave and come back and leave and
Show us back.
Okay. I know. Well, I want to know everybody else's level. I'm like this. I'm like, hey, Francine. I'm like,
Hi, Jason.
So, what's this family? My uncle's first wife passed, she worked with a really rich family, crowd, 11 acres. And from that, so there were all these different families there. The Polito family was there, and the restaurant people, the English, and the Bartenbergs, the East State Rats, and all that. And there's all these other people there. So I wanted, and English used to be one of my dad's, Terry brothers, teaching. They started teaching chapter. Or used to be and I started talking to him about this, about their own past. Because I'm talking about how to take the bond and all that stuff. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know it was called the Chris, they mentioned the Chris, CRS. So he's like, what?
You're a real judge.
I am on your side. So when that officer comes up to your car, you better pull that driver's license down, you better hand it to him. You better talk to the giver. He's gonna have you like on your back. He was coming for it, but he's also questioning my knowledge. It's a corporation investment system, Roy. You know about it. You get money off of it.
Alright, so let's put you
He
in.
knows just questioning my intelligence. And so now it's kind of weird when I'm around it, because I want to talk about it.
I hear a lot of it, but what's coming up now, but that's, my biggest problem with everybody is they want to look at specific items like that. And say, but when that change, that's what nobody knows, nobody understands that part. No, but that's not the problem. It's because of the overall ignorance.
This is at least a good start.
But it's a start, but it's in the wrong direction.
You know, these people that are out teaching, they're working with the administration, you know, we're looking at people.
Well, we can't, that's what I was going to say, is it's not about, you can't tell people the government about running fathers, go back to the beginning, running fathers, were not like their fathers. They were a combination of people that made sense. Which gave us the chance to have a truly free market. It doesn't exist anymore. We're going the right direction, but we're not there yet. We're going the wrong direction. That's going this way. If you want to get to the top, you go this way, or you go this way. The problem is they're ignoring this way. They're all going this way.
Yeah, I know, but at least things are getting better. I mean, it's getting better.
But because they're all going up, but the direction is correct.
Right.
But the solution is not correct. Because it won't solve it, it'll just bring it back where it can come back down.
Educate peace.
Oh,
You ready to get going, Nelson? That mic tabs out sometimes.
Okay, we are going to start resuming. We're going to start resuming the meeting for today, the gathering.
Inside there, yeah.
Oh. Thank you.
And I'm Nelson, I'm a native Pennsylvanian, I'm visiting here in Texas for a little while. A couple things I'd like everybody to do. Could everybody silence their cell phones, because the people who are listening are, they're trying to concentrate, and there's a bit of an interruption also. Background chit chat also helps to limit their enjoyment and concentration.
Exactly.
So what Joe just presented to us is earth-shattering. My vote would have been to have him repeat the entire course of words that he spoke that were, unfortunately, we're going to go ahead and get a copy of it. And if everyone would email Sovereign Living Glenn, maybe he can get us all a copy. Or he already has one? Okay.
Yeah, and so does, what's your name? Yeah.
So requested.
So does Ken.
What would the title of it be?
Freedom from slavery, from statutory slavery. No, it's a Department of Justice thing. I'll let you look at it later on. You can, it's up on the
The good news is that it will start filtering out to the public.
I'll filter it, very important.
And it's all about communication. One of the reasons we like the 2-cent mail opportunity, rather than paying the full 70-some cents it is today, is that the original founding fathers realized communication through letters would be one way to defeat a tyrannical government. And that we always had to have the opportunity to communicate with each other. Hence the very low price mail. Some of us here in this room are successfully sending out certified and registered posts for no cost. And that's because it's our entitlement to do so as an American.
Send it to everybody you can.
So today we're going to resume talking about the
Okay,
organic law.
if you guys want to talk, why don't you go outside or something? You're disturbing things.
It is difficult to, I don't think anybody interrupted Joe when he was talking. So, the good news is, the founding fathers had dealt with monarchs and the Vatican system, ecclesiastical overreach, for centuries. Maybe it goes back 6,000 years to the Sumerians and everyone else. When government causes pain, the scripture says that when the wicked rule, the people groan. Pretty much everybody in this room I've heard groaning at one time or another, for good reason. When the wicked rule, the people groan. When I quote those types of scriptures in front of my city council, they cringe. I was told if I continued to read the Bible during my 5 minutes of free speech out loud, I would be arrested. I was kind of shocked at that. So I asked the next time I spoke to the city council, one moment, Joe, next time I spoke to the city council, I thought about how I wanted to respond, and I suggested that the president of city council consider, before he takes that action, consult with a criminal defense attorney. And then I began to read the scripture, airing them. Naturally, he surrendered and cowered and put his tail between his legs. I haven't heard peep since. Yes, Joe?
My experience is most of these people have not taken their oath of office.
Joe said that most of the people in government have not subscribed their oath of office.
So here's a bunch of people who haven't taken their oath of office telling you that you can't read scripture in their proceedings, correct?
Yes, but because I'm a due diligence type of man, I have all of their oaths in my files. Local city council, all one has to do, and generally it's free. If it's not, tell them, how shall I pay? And then you can get it for free. But basically, one goes to their website and asks about a public record. And the public record today, in fact, I asked for some public records for a local friend of mine here in a little town that's harassing us. And so I requested from the local city clerk through the website a copy of the oath of the city manager and his contract, a copy of the oath of office for the city secretary and his or her contract, a copy of the oath for all city council members. This man doesn't even have in his file all of his city council members' oath at this time. I also recently got a local police officer's oath. I'm not so sure it's constitutional. Why do I say that? Because in Article 2, the oath for the president is to protect, and what are the other two things?
Preserve and defend.
Protect, preserve, and defend. That's true. That is for the commander-in-chief. But that's actually what the oath says for the local police officer. So my question is being due to him being an executive officer, is that the proper oath? The problem is if one opens up the Constitution and goes to Article, and by the way, the purpose of this meeting today, my speech and Glenn helping me, is the organic law, singular. It's comprised of 4 documents, the organic law. You can put in organic law, house.gov, and it will pop up. What are the 4 documents of the organic law? Number 1, this is the organic law of our country. All of us should know this. I had heard about them in history in high school. Since it didn't seem to have any effect on my life, I never bothered learning deeply about it. But then once the overreach that we heard about that's been growing for 100 years or more has now gotten to the point where we can't take it anymore, we're no longer willing to suffer, we can learn what it is that the organic law was put into place to protect us if and when we ever wake up. So the torture got too bad and we said, all right, enough's enough, and we the people stood up. So, Declaration of Independence, 1776, the Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union of 1777, then the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, and finally, the Constitution of the United States. Now, in the process of our studies, one thing I would like all of us to do is be more diligent in proving to ourselves the facts before we start to claim things and what I call patriot myth. We circulate patriot myth, and that circulation of patriot myth only serves to delay our freedom. Today I got a piece of information, and before I was going to talk about it because it sounded good, problem is I looked it up online, and according to AI, this is patriot myth that I was handed today by a patriot. I thought in good faith he was handing it to me. I know he was in good faith.
Read it.
It says, Penn Hollow v. Doan Administrators, a 1795 United States Supreme Court ruling. No corporation has jurisdiction over a natural man. The quote is, this is the quote from the case, is what I was given. It says, inasmuch as every government is an artificial person, an abstraction and a creature of the mind only, a government can interface only with artificial persons. Imaginary, having neither actuality nor substance, is foreclosed from creating and attaining parity with the tangible. The legal manifestation of this is that no government, as well as any law, agency, aspect, court, etc., can concern itself with anything other than corporate artificial persons and the contracts between them.
What's the case?
Penn Hollow v. Doan Administrators, 1795. Penn Hollow, so single word, Penn Hollow. So, according to my immediate research, and I'm not positive, I'm pretty sure, because it didn't come up in my search.
Rundle versus Delaware. Corporation cannot interact with a living man.
Rundle versus Delaware, a corporation cannot. The point being is whether it's so or not, I'm not arguing the point. The point is, before we hand out information, check it ourselves. AI says that these words are not in the case. I looked it up quickly, I couldn't find it. Yes, Glenn.
I've had a lot of people contact me about that, and it's a summary of about 4 pages of that case. But if that quote exactly as and what it is not in there, but it's a summary. And there's a lot of sites that I have that are summaries. And some people have trouble getting their head around that. So if you don't want to use it, don't use it. I don't care. But it is a summary of what is in that case, about 4 pages that's in that case, and it's probably taken from the legal edition of the LN, right, which is the legal edition of the Supreme Court reports. Anyways,
Read the case.
yeah.
Okay, so what we can do is when we hand out information, do then say that it's a summary, because if you put it in quotes, then that to me is a quote. So that's all it is. Is when I try to, and that has helped me clarify for myself also, what is true and what isn't. As we've learned, the Constitution had a style committee that was being written, and the purpose of the style committee is to make sure that the written word communicates certain authorities, powers, restrictions. One of my favorite quotes that has recently come to bear, if Glenn would be kind enough to repeat it for me, it has to do with criminals in government.
I think Jefferson is attributed to this quote. He said that two enemies of the people are criminals and government. So let us bind the second down with the chains of the Constitution so they don't become the legalized version of the first. And that's exactly what's happened today. And fortunately, we have someone in office in the federal presidency that's trying to put a stop to it. But history is full of examples of exactly that kind of stuff going on. If you go to the Magna Carta, chapter 29 of the Magna Carta, it says, the king will not go upon you except by a jury of your peers of the law of the land. So what they're saying, they're putting an end to administrative cases where cops were making decisions on the side of the road, just like they do every day today.
We were in a court the other day with someone in a municipal court, and we had some fun. There were three of us. Steve was there, me, Darren, and we were having some fun with the judge and with the police officers because they are administrative. What Joe talked about today is proof that it's filtering down. The police officers that we spoke to had no clue that the municipal court is a private court. Try to get our minds around that. A municipal court is a private court. One of the problems is they coerce us to go in to these private courts, and then they assume jurisdiction because we showed up.
Right.
How many of us are willing to be locked up because we refuse to enter a municipal court? Are we concerned that they might put us away for a month, 2 months, 3 months? Turns out once we become familiar with who we are and advise them ahead of time somewhere that we are a natural man and that the corporation, if we haven't harmed anybody, cannot restrict our life, liberty, or property. A municipal summons, a municipal judge may not lawfully restrict our life, liberty, or property. Period. It's a civil matter. It cannot take our life, liberty, or property. The problem is that what happens when the police officer is not educated and he is making an emotional decision. If I go home with no job, my wife is going to divorce me. What do I care whether you can fight it out with the municipal solicitor and the court system and the judge who tells me what to do? And while we were in court, when when Steve went into the back room to talk to the prosecutor, I was staying in the courtroom as a court watcher, watching what was going on. And I watched the judge tell the sergeant at arms to go into the room to go listen. He said it, he was very subtle about how he did it. He told the corporal, the bailiff, let's meet in the back room over there. And he pointed to the room where I knew Steve had gone in that same door. And what the judge was telling the bailiff was, I want you to listen and cause a little bit of tension.
Oh, yeah. Well, he's a gun too, right?
What's that?
He has a gun too, right?
Yes, he had a gun.
Yeah.
He sure did. So when that happened, I took that as my cue to talk to a lower police officer who 4 weeks ago, we went into City Hall and they wondered, why are you here? A police officer came running up. We're in City Hall. Why would a police officer come running up? Because he has, I don't know why, he was investigating. What's he investigating? 2 men are in City Hall. That's the problem. We don't recognize them. Or they might have recognized one of us. So we asked him a couple questions. Is there a gold fringe flag in city council chambers? He says, I don't know. And we said, may we look? Initially, he said no. I said, you're telling me. I went over to the door and I pulled it open. I said, the door's unlocked. Why can't we go into the public room and go see if there's a gold fringe flag? I said, what could be wrong with that? I said, you can go ask for it. He did. Couldn't find the light switch. He stumbled, almost fell on his face when he was going up the dais there. And I got out my phone with a little flashlight. And guess what? First thing I did was in the right-hand corner, left hand if I was part of city council, there was a Texas gold fringe flag. So I turned my spotlight over into the other corner. Gold fringe flag. Why does that matter? Because a gold fringe flag means a couple things. Number one, it means that it is commercial jurisdiction. It's a commercial corporate flag. Number two, it is a maritime flag. Every time a man or woman is arrested for whether it's murder or a traffic ticket, there's an all caps name which we've learned about, but why is that important? Because it indicates maritime jurisdiction. When we read the original Constitution, it uses the word person to describe a man. It uses the word citizen to describe a citizen with a capital letter, not all caps. It doesn't say person all caps, it says person with capital P. What's the importance of a capitalized beginning to a word? It's underneath, it's subject to something or someone. So the person and the citizen in the original Constitution is subject to who or whom. I'm not sure you're an English professor. What's the proper term?
To whom?
To whom? To whom does it refer? It refers to me, the natural man. That person is under my authority, my signature. The citizen, I've chosen to accept the benefit of citizen. In the Constitution, it talks about all privileges and immunities of citizens with a capital C. That's a state citizen. It's not a citizen of the United States. It's a citizen of one of the several states. Where were we born? What geographic land were we born on? I was born on Pennsylvania, so I'm a Pennsylvanian. Nothing can ever take that away. I can't change it. It's done. What other states do we have here? Illinois. See? Virginia. Missouri. I know you're Missouri. Joe's New York.
I was born in California.
Oh, California. So he was born in California.
Can you ever change that fact?
No. You can't change the fact. And that's what the Founding Fathers understood. Glenn likes to talk about right of blood, which I agree with, the descension of our ancestors. There's also the right of soil. And I saw a case recently where a man claimed his right of soil and successfully won something. I forget what it was. But he said, I'm a man, I'm of the soil. Oh, it was in that Bynum case, he said, his statement. So, back to the four founding documents. The organic law. Why is it important? As we've learned from what we learned today, the cases of the Supreme Court are supposed to only confirm the constitutionality of a particular law of the United States or of a state. If we're living in a corporate fiction world, do any of the corporate laws, regulations apply to us? They shouldn't. Now, if we harm someone or if we injure them or their property, how will we be held accountable if there's no law? If we claim I'm not under any law or statutes, how if I harm someone, realistically, if I hurt someone, their body, or take their property, what should government, even if it's statutory, what should they be able to do? They have to have some authority. It's out to the listeners here. Anybody have a thought on that? How should that work? If I claim to be sovereign, and yet I'm doing things that are maybe I hit something, or accidentally or not, how do we address that as free Americans? Yes.
If you hurt someone else, then you go before that person and ask what I can do to basically make you whole again. What can I do to resolve the
So
problem?
personal responsibility. I remember I was in California one time, and this particular, they don't get much rain out there, so when it does rain, it's a disaster. And at this particular road, they weren't thinking about it when they were creating it, and it was a little bit of an incline down, and there was a big pool of water, and everybody started sliding and crashing into each other. And I fortunately had some experience and was able to avoid that, but I'm now in the car, and a guy coming up behind me, rather than hit me, he did the honorable thing. He turned and went into the median and only destroyed his own car. While I'm watching that, I can abuse the privilege of serving, and their bar members are preventing them from being prosecuted. So I'm reading the Declaration of Independence, and this is one of my favorites. Ordered a sergeant to sign, demand all the things that they swore under oath that they were going to afford everybody, and you don't get it, and they don't know that that's wrong. Okay? So we talked to the younger officer, he's probably been on the force 20 years. I said, did you take an oath to support the Constitution of the United States or the Constitution of the United States of America? He says, I can't remember. So what I did today, or recently, last week, is I went ahead and I got a copy of his oath, and I'm going to go ahead and deliver it to him as his own so he can keep it at his house. So he can look at it and see what it says. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and it says that all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution. So the question is, what does that mean to support this Constitution? Could you enlarge that, Glenn, so I can read it? So this is 1776. We're working towards 1787, 89, to when the Constitution 10 years later was finalized. But this is still back on the Declaration of Independence. The king has effected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. How many of us have felt that it's more of a military occupation than a civil government? Right? Yes.
I believe it is. Just every time you go into a courtroom, they basically control everything that you do.
So, one time, Nelson, we were you at Vince's deal when we were going to do discovery, and then the attorney, prosecutor, whatever, went out into the hallway with us, and somebody got on the radio and said, "Send the people."
So, anyways, we were doing some court watching, and when we went out to the when the prosecutor was going to do the discovery and show the evidence or whatever, this is in the criminal court for Tarrant County, so we went out into the down to the hallway, and somebody got on the radio and said, "Hey, we need all officers on this floor," and they were coming from either end. And literally 20 officers
I
showed up.
think it was
And they're like,
more than 20.
there's more than
And
20.
all these elevators kept coming up. They had some other elevators besides the public one that they were coming up.
Right.
And we got surrounded by them.
So
Yeah.
there was a red alert for sovereign citizens, right?
They're terrified of us,
And why is that?
because they're stupid, that's why.
Well,
No,
because they don't want us wrecking their little gimmick.
that's exact, I believe that's true. And also, if we ever figure out a way to hold them accountable to the violation of their oath, that would mean federal prison.
They wouldn't like that.
I was in front of city council and I said to them, there was a case called Rad versus Ocean City. Any of us that have been unlawfully detained, RAAB versus Ocean City. This particular case, the woman I went to high school with her. She married a wonderful doctor. He was a couple years older than her in our classes. And they stayed in the hometown, and you would think that a local police officer would give respect to that type of person. No. There was a boat trailer without a boat on it, lightweight, parked on the street. Well, we have a Sydney ordinance, you can't have it on the street. She says, I'll move it, it's 10 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock at night. This man, who was the officer, had a reputation of being a little unruly and doing whatever he wanted. And again, I talked about 10 years, this is back in 2015, 10 years of no oaths for the police. So imagine if you had if we were allowed to go out and commit any crime we wanted with a gun on the public and not be held accountable because the judges and prosecutors would cover us, how mean would some of us get? Horrible.
This official insanity is all over the place. How many have heard of a child, a young person being accused of a crime? Maybe they're guilty, maybe they're not. They go in and the judge says, I'm going to try you, you're going to be tried as an adult. All right, so you've got the judge. The first thing the judge does is the kid's either an adult or they're not. It's not up to the judge to decide. It's a matter of statute. So the judge immediately tries the kid for something he's not. They try him as an adult. So the judge is committing a fraud upon his own court. And then what happened to the presumption of innocence? It's an absolute message to the jury. This kid is guilty, find him guilty. That's all there is to it. And this kind of stuff, it's more often than not in our judicial system. They disobey the law and flaunt the law all over the place all the time.
Well, what you brought to us today, Joe, was music to everyone's ears. I heard everyone here. I felt a little bit of a weight lift off everyone as he was reading this latest report of the Justice Department. And I can't wait to get a copy of it. Thank you, Joe, for your offering today. That was awesome. So the police officer, back to Rad versus Ocean City. 15 minutes she was held in handcuffs because he couldn't wait, the police officer couldn't wait when she offered to move it herself, a little girl, a little woman. Now, can I help you as the public servant? We'll get it off the street. No. He put her in handcuffs to write her a ticket because she had the gall to not immediately do what he wanted. After 15 minutes, a senior officer, captain, shows up, tells him to take the cuffs off. 15 minutes of unlawful detention. They have deep pockets, so she didn't care about how much money it cost. It took 7 years till she finally threw in the towel and said, all right, I'll surrender. We all know that every judge and judicial system can make whatever they want pretty much happen in court. unless we have an immense amount of study, like Glenn does, he occasionally gets them to shake it loose, but in this case, she hired bar members, and the deal was in the back room, we can't let this win, we just have to wind it out, let them keep paying, went to federal court. She finally accepted a $150,000 settlement. The reason I'm talking about this is twofold. One, $10,000 a minute is a case now we can claim of a settlement for unlawful detention, because the judicial proceedings, acts, and records of one state apply to the other state, correct? So you can claim that. And the other thing that happened was that I stated to City Council, the reason City Council that we always have to pay out these settlements is because for the city or the city official employee to admit wrongdoing would be admitting to a federal crime. That's why they can't admit wrongdoing. And they heard City Council and the public, which was more important, heard. So now we have to be willing to not necessarily settle, because then we're just allowing the mob to continue in their crimes, the government mob. We're saying, okay, you hurt me, pay me, and you go out there and keep doing it to the rest of the public. So at some point, some of us have stood up and said no more. So this, yes, Glenn.
In my case that I filed in the federal court over with Montague County, the Attorney General came back, and first of all, Nathan Heck, the Chief Judge of the Supreme Court, was being sued in his private capacity, and the Attorney General was representing him, and I went and did a motion to strike because they don't have standing because he's being sued in his private capacity, and the Attorney General came back a couple times, and then when he came back, he said, well, the Attorney General can settle a matter. And I said, I'm not interested in a settlement. I want his bond, not a penny more, not a penny less. Maybe he can find a job doing something else, like digging ditches or something. Or maybe he can live in a cardboard box, which is what he's trying to do to me. Him and his bar members. You see what I'm saying? Anyways, he resigned after that. Within a week.
What was his title again?
Chief Judge of the Supreme Court, Nathan Hecht.
In Texas.
In Texas.
State of Texas. How recent was that?
That was probably about 3 weeks ago. And Randy Kelton had filed lawsuits against him, and they just blew him on. Of course, Randy, I think Randy he likes to tell people he's a talk radio show host, about the law. And but he's the first one that says you never ever tell the enemy what you're going to do. And yet he was telling the enemy, so they would dismiss his case as frivolous because he's putting on a show for his radio program. You see what I'm saying? And then when he went to the Court of Appeals, they dismissed it again as frivolous because he's putting on a show for his radio program. And now he's suing the 3 judges that made that ruling in the Court of Appeals. I would never tell him if I was such a thing. I'd never tell him that. And you never tell the enemy. You got to understand it's the enemy. Okay, they're not your public servants. They're treating you like the enemy, and so the enemy, and that's all there is to it. And it talks about it in the Declaration of Independence. In peace, friends at peace. In war, the enemy. And you got to understand that is you're at war. Okay, if they're talking to you, you're at war. That's what you have to understand, and you got to treat it like war. You never ever tell the enemy what you're going to do. Brian yesterday got sentenced over no driver's license or no registration?
DWI.
Oh, was it DWI? Anyways, they had a video of him getting up in the cop's face and yelling at the cop and calling him names and all sorts of stuff. And the jury saw that and said, again, you never ever tell the enemy. They gave him a maximum sentence. They gave him a year in jail. Anyways, because you never ever tell the enemy what you're going to do. You sandbag the bastards. You know, it's the enemy.
At any time, if you're talking to or interacting with a policeman in any way, he's building a case against you at that moment.
That's correct. And so what some of us have learned to do, I'll tell you what I learned to do, and it has shown some effectiveness. There were 5 or 6 trespassing charges from my church still pending against me after I got out of jail after almost 2 years off and on. They still were trying to make the bonds good by making me go into a municipal court. I refused. So I'm at city council dressed in my prison uniform, and I said, there's 2 warrants out for my arrest right now. This was about 3 months ago. They had to come and arrest me. It was on public record. I notified the public there's a warrant out. So I sat back down. The police officer walks up to me and says, Mr. So-and-so, please come to the back. We have a warrant for your arrest. I said, you do? I turned to him and to my left. I'm still sitting down. The city council sees this all happening. A guy with a gun coming up to talk to me after I just told them there's a warrant out for my arrest. So a uniformed police officer comes up and says, you're right, there's a warrant out for your arrest. Come to the back. I said, do you have it on you? He said, no. I said, well, then why don't you go get it? He said, it's on the way. I said, I'll tell you what. You go to the back, and when you get it, you come up with it and show it to me, and then we'll talk about whether I'm going to go with you or not. He turned around, walked to the back, and waited till he got the warrant. And when he brought up the warrant, after the meeting was over, I did what Glenn advises. I checked it for a judicial signature and a stamp. Neither were on it. So I advised the police officer, this is not a valid warrant. He says it has the judge's name printed on it. I said, okay.
Anybody with a typewriter can do that.
Exactly. So the question is, how do we notice that executive officer? Article 6, Clause 3 of this Constitution says all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states, shall
Continue in office during good behavior.
It says shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution. Glenn, is it not true that when a government official fails to support this Constitution, he acts in his private capacity and he no longer represents the government?
That's absolutely true, and then it also says that they continue office during good behavior, and so if he's doing something that is not judicial in nature, then he's in bad behavior as a judge. Again, another reason.
I was talking about the police officer, but okay.
Whatever. Okay, so then the police officer, yeah, that's right. When he's operating in his private capacity, and the warrant has to have a signature and a court seal on it, and if it doesn't have that, then you tell them that I have a right to resist unlawful arrest with lethal force if necessary, and that's what happened here in Colleyville. I started filing attempted murder charges against all of the mayor and city council, and the mayor of Bedford actually resigned over attempted murder charges I filed against them. And at least I think that's what happened. They're never going to tell me, but so the reason is that I have a right to resist an unlawful arrest with lethal force if necessary, and they intended that I exercise my right so they'd have an excuse to murder me. And as evidenced by the guy in Utah that resisted their unlawful arrest, and they killed him.
True.
Glenn, would you make a couple of comments about a court of competent jurisdiction? Any bunch of people who sit around and play cards on Wednesday night, they're not a court. what's a court of competent jurisdiction? And based on the Department of Justice comments now, what's a court of competent jurisdiction?
Well, exactly, exactly. An administrative court is not a court of competent jurisdiction. Okay, a court of competent jurisdiction is an Article 3 court. Okay, and I have court cases that like this federal court. I filed a lawsuit in federal court. Well, there's a case called Balzac versus People of Puerto Rico that says the federal court is not a court under Article 3 of the Constitution. It's under Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2, to regulate all the territory and other property of the United States, which means that it's not an Article 3 court. It says right in there it's not an Article 3 court. And so that means the Court of Appeals are in Article 3, and it says in the Constitution, it says in the first words in the Constitution, it says Congress is all legislative powers shall be in a Congress which will consist of the House and the Senate. And so then in Article 1, Section 10, I think it's 1 Section, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 7, it says Congress shall have power to make legislative courts, inferior courts to the Supreme Court, legislative inferior courts. And so the point being is that anything that's created by legislation is an inferior court. Well, even the Supreme Court is created by legislation, okay? That's the Judiciary Act of 1792 created the Supreme Court and all the district courts and the courts of appeals. So they're all legislative, they're all inferior, and they're not Article 3. So anyways.
Glenn,
Yeah.
So there hasn't been,
question so they hear it.
there hasn't been an Article 3 corporation, or 3 court since 1871, correct?
Actually, you participated in an Article 3 court. Our one Supreme Court is an Article 3 court. And that was here before the Constitution. That was here, and if you read Hale versus Hinkle, it says there that the law of the land was here long before the government. Okay, long antecedent to the Constitution. It said right in Hale versus Hinkle, law of the land and common law are interchangeable phrases, and that was here long before the government ever came into existence, and it's always been here. And so that's our common law, our one Supreme Court. That's we the people again.
However, when we try to exercise liberty, guess what happens? The order goes out to squatters. So that's the question. How do we slowly but surely loosen the chains of tyranny? Here's Jefferson. When governments fear the people, there is liberty. I'm going to repeat it. When governments fear the people, there is liberty. Guess who fears Nelson right now? I tell you who. The current chief of police of Ocean City, a godly fear. He's not afraid I'm going to hurt him. He's afraid if he does something that's against me, he's going to lose his job like the last guy. And I like him. He's a good man. The Holy Spirit woke me up and said, this new chief is my brethren. The problem is, when I was being arrested that night 3 months ago, how did I advise, how did I build a case starting right then? I started building my case saying, get away from me unless you have a warrant. When he showed me the warrant, I said, get away from me, it's not lawful, these are the reasons. When he took me downstairs, I quoted Article 6, Clause 1, telling them that I accept your oath of office. I said, who's actually arresting me here? Is it you, ma'am, or him? Who's arresting me? Because they need to be advised as I'm in the handcuffs. I said, please call the chief. Do not do this. You want $1,500 bail? I'm not giving it to you. You're going to have to take me to county jail. I'm not promising to go by coercion, being forced to go into a municipal court. It's dead. There's nothing living in there.
On the basis of a warrant that wasn't signed by a judge, didn't have court seal.
How can they go home to their wife or husband and say, I lost my job? They can't do it. So we have to give them the courage to do it, but courage comes from being informed, knowing the law. So when we were over in Bedford recently, I spoke to the young officer, he's younger than me, and I said, did you know that this is a private court you're working in today? Silence. And the bailiff was listening like this, like with his ears, like this. Because I was just talking to this guy, knowing full well the senior guy who has worked with the judge longer and is in charge of doing what the judge says. And I discussed all the things I'm discussing here, educating him. No, he didn't know it was a private court. So what do? We have to educate them. Now, unfortunately, Steve he was already in their clutches, so he had to deal with it. It's a problem, because when we do something that gives them an appearance of authority, we have to extricate ourselves. It's not easy to do. I couldn't extricate myself, but I stayed in jail willingly for almost 2 years rather than accept a bar member as my counsel that was being forced upon me. 5 times I was in court, and I said to the judge, I fired this man 5 times. Why is he still here? He said, my boss said I can be here. So we're going to get to him. So the point being, when governments fear the people, there is liberty. How can we cause them to fear? You're worried about your wife losing your job? How about me causing you to go to federal prison because you're violating the Constitution? How about that? How would she like that? So I asked the police officer who had me in handcuffs, please tell the desk sergeant to call the chief of police at home. He only became chief because the other guy got fired because of what they did to us. Glenn filed criminal complaints with the FBI and the provost marshal and 3 or 4 other people, and all they did was fire him at the moment. We're getting around to maybe prosecuting for the treasonous act. But considering the fact they had operated for 10 or 20 years with no oath, why should I expect anything different? So somebody had to stand up. So I refused to accept a bar member as counsel, and I was sentenced to, without a trial, I was sentenced to a assessment of my mental competency to stand trial for refusing a bar member and for telling the judge that I didn't accept her jurisdiction. And she got very angry and said, you need to have a competency exam, signed an order to go to a mental institution for that alone. And after the first psychiatric evaluation, the first immigrant psychiatrist said, the reason I have to find you not competent to stand trial, I have all this on paper, signed by the state. You refuse to work with your counsel.
You would be crazy.
So, he, being an immigrant from India, wasn't going to go again. The judge sent me, he was just doing his job. But that's what he put in the report. I don't know if he did it to try to free us because he's tired of being told to hold completely sane people in an insane asylum. So the second, that was 3 months. By the way, they do sell bonds. It turns out at the end of 6 months, to the day, they came and got me. They took me back to jail because the bond was up. And the bond was no longer going to pay for the stay. That was related somehow. So after the first 3 months, and they issued that judgment, that assessment, I met with 2 or 3 regular white Americans who have been here for a couple 100 years. And I stated to them, I said, you might as well find me incompetent again. You know what the reason is? I still refuse to work with a bar member. I will not let them represent me. They said, well, you know we can hold you here indefinitely. Threatening me. I said, okay, if that's what you want to do, you go ahead. I said, you're already violating the Constitution because I've already explained to you why, and you're still not doing anything to get me out. You're sworn officers too. They're state employees. They have to sign to support the Constitution. So Jefferson says, when governments fear the people, there is liberty. When the people fear the government, there is
Tyranny.
Everybody here knew the answer to that. Great. When the people fear the government. Why do we fear the government? Because of what they can do to us. Patrick Henry's most famous quote in most people's minds is what?
Give me liberty or give me death.
Give me liberty or give me death. Who is willing to say that? I'll tell you what, almost everybody here is. That's why we're all here. Right, Bill?
Right.
You're right. We're having fun. The founding fathers called it the animation of liberty. The animation of liberty. That's why when we talk to people about liberty, they get excited. Oh, this is fun. Freedom. That's why people flock to our shores. This is the rest of that statement. The strongest reason for the people to retain the right to keep and bear arms is as a last resort to protect themselves against tyranny and government. I've never taken up arms against an official because we would end up probably dead. Some people have. I've seen one guy in Utah, he told the cop, we're gonna get it on right now. If you want to proceed, he said, I've got my hand on my pistol right now. If you want to have a fight, well, let's go. And the two cops got in their car and went away, wisely. Because he told them this is what's going to happen. But he was ready to give himself for simply the right to travel. I wouldn't go that far myself. I'd deal with it a little bit different way. But I think he had gotten to his wit's end with how they were treating him. So what we have to do is learn our foundation of what the founding fathers put in writing about what their complaints were and their problems. The king, combined with others, this is just probably one of the best lines in here that we're witnessing. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution. What Constitution, Glenn, do you think they were referring to? I don't know. He, the king, has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution. This is in 1776.
Yeah, all the states back then had still had charters, and so it was basically they were talking about common law, it was martial law is what they were doing, subjecting us to a jurisdiction. And the causes and necessities for taking up arms, it says that the king has extended the courts of admiralty and vice admiralty far beyond their ancient limits to supersede the courts of common law and publish the use and exercise of the law martial. So that's what they're talking about there is martial law, which is foreign to our Constitution.
So martial law should be part of our Constitution as well. So how do we resist martial law? I explained how I did it. Now let me get to what happened at the end of the day. When I was willing to go to county jail because I refused to be coerced into agreeing to appear before a municipal judge. I refused to appear before a municipal judge, and they threatened my liberty for an undetermined amount of time. And they said, you can avoid this if you just agree and give us $1,500 bail. I said, no, thank you. Have the sergeant call the chief of police at home. I know it's a Thursday night. He doesn't want to be bothered at home. I said, but please, I'm in handcuffs. I'm like, please, call him before you do this. I don't think they did. I don't remember them ever getting on the radio and calling in. They just basically put me in the car and off I went to the county jail. When I got to the county jail, the intake person basically said, why is he here? She looked at the paperwork. Why is he here? called to her boss. We have to take them in. They took me in. I was figuring it's now Friday morning, Friday noon, Friday 2 p.m. I'm like, all right, this other judge who you go to his court to see him about these matters, not the one that had me arrested because they combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution. They keep doing it, and what do? We sometimes get emotional, and we sometimes can't clearly think, and we don't know, are we willing to give our lives? Let me read you, I have to tell you this quote from the end of the Declaration of Independence. This is probably my favorite quote out of all of them in there. We'll get to it, who knows when, but at the end of the Declaration of Independence, this is them agreeing, 40-some, 50-some, 60-some men all signing. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. And that's what was so admirable about these people here. They sort of pledged to each other their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. So now all of us have to improve our understanding and our standing so we're on rock solid ground. Steve, they took us into a maritime court. You were on a ship. I was taken into a ship. Because I put on the record what I recently sent you regarding the constitutional crimes, there's over 15 crimes they're committing out of the Constitution just for arresting me for trespassing without a valid warrant. So I advised the police officer of Article 6, Clause 1, and some of us never interact, I'm sure, with, you're not, probably Francine is not like up against in their face at all. She probably goes along a little bit just to not have problems, which is fine. You're not the warrior, we are. Appreciate that. It says that Article 6, Clause 1, and this I had quoted, I memorized it. While I was in jail, I memorized the Declaration of Independence. I can't quote it for a second, I have to brush up for an hour or so to be able to quote it. This is what I said to the police on camera. The camera was rolling. So I'm putting him on notice. I accept your oath of office. I'm building a case for his demise. And he's going to say, they told me to do it. And I'm going to say, I told you not to. So don't complain to me when you lose your job. I told you not to. And I gave you the reasons why. Article 6, I accept your oath of office to support the Constitution of the United States. Then I quoted this Article 6, Clause 1. I said to him, you know what Article 6, Clause 1, the two of them, him and her. Because they wouldn't tell me who was doing the arrest, so I addressed both of them. Both of you are noticed. All debts and engagements entered into before the adoption of this Constitution shall be as valid against the United States under this Constitution as under the Confederation. Why is the Confederation mentioned in the Constitution if the Constitution replaced the Articles of Confederation? Who can answer that question? Is it true? Anybody? What's your opinion? What's your opinion?
It's what the Constitution replaced the
Yes. Did the Constitution of 1787 replace the Articles of Confederation? Why was the Confederation met? Let me repeat. All debts and engagement contracted and engagements entered into before the adoption of this Constitution shall be as valid against the United States under this Constitution as under the Confederation? Why was the Confederation mentioned in the Constitution? So I quoted this to the two officers. Now I built a case, they've now been noticed of the constitutional crime they're about to commit. They are responsible for fulfilling their oath, not being order follower, and as Glenn likes to say, that when they violate their oath to the Constitution, they cease to represent the government, and they're liable in their private capacity. Not just from money, but also their liberty. Which now, from what Joe read us today, may be starting to happen. And what was very interesting, proof of maybe what Joe is now saying from Gorsuch, they got the word maybe a month or two ago, I think. Because we just got something in the mail. I say, we, Glenn, might help her. He's been assisting me immensely in fighting off these vultures. The judge that put me in the mental institution without due process of law, the New Jersey Constitution says a judge can do that with no trial. Can you imagine that? No. It's real. It's been in there since 1947, which, by the way, is less than a year after the Pan-American Bar Treaty, which, by the way, is 1 or 2 years after the UN. So that's the order it had. As soon as New Jersey got the chance to run to the United Nations Authority, they did. And they became from one of the most freer states to one of the most restricted by the Constitution. But that Constitution does not supersede our rights, unalienable rights, because the judges in every state shall, it says shall, Article 6, Clause 2, this Constitution and the law of the United States which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land. When we go into municipal court, when I was being arrested under a municipal court judge's order, I knew I was being arrested in maritime and it had no basis in law of the land. They couldn't win. They could take my liberty, but they're going to pay me. Joe?
In the end, a common law jury of your peers is the final say. Those are people who know you, they know your mind, they know your heart, and it's impossible to get a dozen of them to convict you unless you're truly guilty.
And they should convict me if I'm guilty.
When we lost that, we lost everything.
And we're trying to restore it, and we're trying to do it without them taking our lives, and or locking us up in their hotel, where it's almost impossible. I had to stand at the phone for hours on the phone in jail with Glenn and with Charlie and with others as we began to unravel this mess about how they were able to do that to me. And now, more importantly, is how to get people out who they've done it to, who we haven't been able to yet, and we're working on that diligently. So Article 6, Clause 2 says, the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. What? The law of the land, supreme law of the land. So the judge that was arresting me, the judge that was prosecuting Steve in municipal court, he's not obliged to the law of the land. The question is why? And what I had to do was when I went up in front of the city council and told them there's 2 warrants out for my arrest, that forced the cop in the back to call headquarters. He just said there's a warrant out. What do? Arrest him. I made them arrest him. They were just ignoring the warrant. That's the trick they play. They have it in their back pocket. We're going to take your liberty when you least expect it. So I said, all right, let me go ahead and test it. So I said, there's 2 warrants out for my arrest right now. Why aren't I being arrested? I said that. Guess what happened? I was arrested. But in the process, I built a case against the municipal judge. Because the officer's gonna say, I was ordered by my sergeant, and the sergeant's gonna say, I was ordered by my chief, and the chief is gonna say, I was ordered by the judge. But that doesn't allow you to violate the Constitution. I told you why it was not constitutional. Is it my problem you don't know? That I was telling the truth? So he's gotta think, do I let this guy go and lose my job, be put on administrative leave, and they have a right to fire me because I didn't, then he has to sue. He has to sue to get his job back or his money? He's like, oh, I'll deal with it. But eventually, we're gonna send one of those cops to jail, and the rest of them here. Joe.
One of the ways you can send one of those cops to jail is when they walk up to you with a pistol on their hip, you can ask them, is that a pistol? They'll answer what? Yes. You say, is it loaded? And they'll answer yes. And you say, do you intend to shoot me if I disobey your orders? And they'll say yes, and that's first-degree felony assault with a deadly weapon.
And who's gonna prosecute that, Joe?
I don't know, but you can sue for damages.
It would be fun, wouldn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
And that's what we have to learn, and we have to practice. One of the things we don't do is practice. We can be told what to do, but how many of us have ever been locked in a room by a jury of our peers and said, you're not getting out until you know how to write a habeas corpus properly? I don't know how to write a habeas corpus properly. To this day, I need to learn. I'm bringing it up because we need to learn. So that when one of us is locked up unconstitutionally. So what happened was, they took me to county jail. Friday evening was coming. 4:45, they came to my jail cell and said, you want to go see the judge? I said, yes. I was now ready to go see the judge on the screen. Prior to that, I didn't want to give him jurisdiction in the previous iterations. But now I knew what to say and do. So I went, and I told them all the things I usually tell them. And they basically said, get out of here. He can't hold you. You owe no bail. And there's no order to appear in any municipal court. They'll be in touch. Thank you very much. 23 hours of false imprisonment at $10,000 a minute under RAB versus Ocean City. It's the exact same city. I don't know how they're going to get out of it. We have to figure out how to get them. That's $600,000 an hour. Times 20 hours is 1.2 million per day. Not 250. Darren was telling me he saw somebody yesterday that got 250 for a one night stay. So we talk about all that too.
Something has changed in our government, and you are no longer to be presumed innocent unless proven guilty, until proven guilty. You're deemed to be an enemy combatant de facto. When you drive down the road, the cops, the judges, they regard you as an enemy combatant. And unless and until they know you're not armed, they presume you're armed and dangerous.
Right. So what we have to do is slowly build the dike to stop the whatever ocean Holland is trying to protect itself against the water. Who knows what that is? Anybody? No. They build a dike to stop the water from coming into their land. So that's what we're doing slowly but surely, holding back the water while we're busy building bricks to stop this onslaught of admiralty and maritime law drowning us. We're getting there slowly but surely. It looks like the executive branch is going to have to do it. So the Declaration of Independence continues on and says, and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation.
Pretended.
That means color of law. Pretended legislation, that means color of law. It's not law, it just looks like it.
I'm going to give you, I can't prove this, but I'm going to give it to you as something to investigate and chew on. One of our advisors that Ken so graciously put us in touch with, his videos, He claims this man claims the reason they're able to do what they're doing, the presumption that they're under, is under the 14th Amendment, that me, common law Nelson, the capital P, not all caps P, under this Constitution, that man chose, by virtue of not eliminating the all caps version that was assigned to me at birth, makes me a criminal. Under what amendment would I be a criminal and be a slave holder? 14th Amendment, which we know isn't law, but they use it, and we're being afflicted, and we went in and got the all caps name, never did anything to eliminate its use. Hence, the bar members, courtesy of King George, get to assume we are enemies of the state. Even though they're not the real state, they're claiming they're the real state, using that against us, saying we are criminals. We're slave owners.
Belligerents.
We're belligerents. We have never emancipated this slave. Therefore, they can, and then we go ahead and admit to being that and owning it and answering for it when we get a driver's license, when we get a social security card. We're admitting to being a slave owner, which is against the Constitution. And that's how this man claims. And it makes too much sense to me. And I think we're getting close, thanks to Ken, to unplugging the charge, the electrical charge that we're giving these police officers out here with the judges and the bar members to take our life, liberty, and property under a presumption that they don't even know why. They just know if they hit this button, this is what happened. My dad, before me, he was a police officer. He hit this button, and that's what happened. Why would I think anything else would happen? So after 23 hours, they let me go, and I showed up at the next city council with another notice of another warrant from the same judge. This time, the bail was $2,500. So I go, this is in December last year. I go to city council and I tell them, the reason I'm telling this story is to give you real world evidence of how to deal with situations that they're attacking us. So I'm being attacked by a court, a municipal court, with a gold fringe flag. They attack me. I go to my city council, which, by the way, in their honor, they have reinstalled a new flag. They took the gold fringe flag out of city council chambers and put in a non-gold fringe US of A flag. After I didn't stand to pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, after they would stand in like Nazis, address the Nazi flag, Heil Hitler, we'll do whatever you tell us, even if it doesn't make any sense. They're pledging allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, but the flag they're pledging allegiance to is the flag of the United States. It's a maritime commercial flag. I said, at least turn around and face the other way outside. The flag, the real flag here is out here. And then I asked them, even if you can't remove the gold fringe flag, so I can stand up to pledge allegiance, would you just please put one up there right next to it? So one day we went in and it wasn't there last year. Glenn and I did a field trip to go inspect it in person. We opened up the door to council chambers. It was closed. I thought it would be locked. It was wide open. I think it's open from 9 to 5. If ever we, the people, ever want a place to go assemble, it's sitting there. Come and get it. What do? Everything but that. So the city council got a new flag, and I am getting remember, I've asked them 20 times on the record, is the city municipal court of Ocean City a private court? Yes or no? Will someone please answer? The city council president said, the city solicitor will talk to you after the meeting. I said, no, I want it on the record. I want to hear from her on the record. When they don't answer me, of course, that tells the public what? It's a municipal court, it's private. So that private court sends me a warrant. New, $2,500. I just got out of jail 2 weeks ago. They had to let me go. I promised to go to no court and get a new notice of appearance. And it says on there, to avoid further embarrassment, please come in and pay $2,500. It literally says that. I'm like, I'll be embarrassed. Let me go back to city council dressed in my prison uniform and see how that embarrasses them. Embarrasses the city. So I go in and I tell them, I have a warrant for my arrest right here. I said, I don't see myself being arrested this time. So after the meeting, I went up to the council president. I gave him the notice, and the meeting was over because I was the last speaker. He gave it to the city solicitor, and after the meeting, the city solicitor comes over to me and she says, Nelson, you'll need this to know when your court date is. I handed it back to her. Excuse me, she was trying to give it to me. I said, excuse me 1 minute, let me get out my Chom camera. And I pulled out my little camera and I said, I want to record this. You might as well, I must have hit her with a cattle prod because she threw the stuff down and ran out of the room. So I took it and went back up to the city council president. I said, here, this is yours. And I'm waiting for them to figure out how they're going to arrest him now. And they may have a plan. I don't know. Next time I go back, you might be hearing here that Nelson got arrested again for some reason. But I don't know what it is. Joe.
Do they have the equivalent of T-close complaints up there? Judicial complaints?
Yes, they go nowhere, just like, well, I think they go nowhere. We did file bar grievances,
Yeah.
and nothing happened. Oh, but I said all this to say, about a month ago, a filing after I got out of jail in 22, Glenn finally prepared, helped me prepare, he did it, and we worked on it together, a writ of coram nobis, which we went down and filed with the court, the local district court in your case. And I just forgot about it, figuring they're never going to answer. Well, guess what just happened last month? Out of the blue, my sister calls me and says, you got something in the mail, and she opened it up and sent me copies, and it was actually the response to the coram nobis. I think this judge got a notice for all the crimes she committed against me, sending me to the mental institution without a trial, which in her mind she was allowed to do. She got word that the Supreme Court, what Joe read earlier today, that the snowball is running downhill and is going to bowl them over. And they better fix everything that they did that was wrong. That would be my hope. Is what's happening. And she's going to try to fix it now, and she rejected the coram nobis and didn't grant it, and now we're working on a response. But now that, and back when Glenn told me, he said, all you have to do is respond. If they respond, then we have a new time to appeal that begins, a new time period. So a lot of us get exhausted from all of the legal mumbo jumbo. We seem to be continually attacked by flying insects, snakes, things that are venomous animals that are coming out of every nook and cranny to paralyze us and cause a shortness of life. And that's why we're here today. So back to the, what do we got going? For quartering large bodies of armed troops among us. One of the men, the police officers that crushed my hands when I was during one of the arrests at my church, he was very emotional, and he said, "You know, I'm on active duty." He was telling me he's a trained killer, yet he's employed by the municipal police. So when he put the handcuffs on me, not on my wrists, no, he had to move them down and forcibly crushed my hands on purpose. It didn't matter that I was objecting, because he had the gun. So is he a large body of armed troops? Yes, he was armed and he was part of the troop. For protecting them, this is the King of England, this is the state of Texas, this is the United States. For protecting them, these officers, these judges, by a mock trial, from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states. Same thing's happening today. They do it with the bar. That's why the bar is our sworn enemies. They took an oath, all right, to murder us at the soonest possible chance and take our life, liberty, and property, and then set up a system with fake money where they get paid to do it. And they filter down the payments to the judges. Did you know that that judge got a commission check for sending me to the mental institution in Washington, D.C.? Glenn proves it, stat 31 or something, I forget what it is.
31 stat, yeah. It's in the Code of Law for the District of Columbia.
Code of Law for the District of Columbia. So Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. So what the Founding Fathers did in these founding documents was genius. A lot of people say they were turncoats, they were just trying to sell us down the river. I don't agree. The more we study this, the more genius their actions have become to me. For depriving us, in many cases, of the benefits of trial by jury. I was in jail, had nothing better to do than study, and I started looking up words. And my friend Charlie was telling me about trial by jury, and he studied a ton about trial by jury, where Glenn has come to the same conclusion. They conduct the trial, they do everything, including the sentence. And I looked up the word jury as an adjective. They give us a jury trial. In fact, if you remember Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, I think it's 38, if I'm not mistaken. The first line guarantees us trial by jury. The second line calls it a jury trial. So the people write the law, but they put both laws into the code. So they give us what we know we're supposed to be entitled to. Federal Rules of Civil Procedure number 32. Yes, Gordon.
You missed for imposing taxes on us without our consent.
Oh, I did. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Glenn. It was highlighted. So I highlighted the one. This is my own personal version. You can get it from me or from Glenn just by requesting it, where I highlighted the important words, whether they were capitalized or not, and why that matters. You have to come to your own conclusions. But for imposing taxes on us without our consent. I was watching a Western, my friend Charlie used to say, which I didn't believe him, he said, everybody had to agree to pay taxes out west. You didn't have to pay any tax if you didn't want to. You had to agree to pay the tax. So the day after he said that one time, I was watching a Western, and it had to do with El Paso, the city of El Paso. There was a story about how they needed water, and they needed a man to become mayor to raise money to bring an aqueduct to bring water to El Paso, supposedly a true story. But because everybody had to agree to pay for the aqueduct, dig the trench to bring the water, whatever they had to do, and that was the fact. As long as they didn't agree, they said, no, we're not paying for it. And he had to get to the point where they did agree and saw the wisdom of paying the tax. So he had to make his case. The mayor had to make his case. Why all of us have to pay tax, this tax, to do this one thing. And they agreed, and El Paso became a very key part of the rest. Because they saw what would happen, but they needed water to make it happen. So imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us, this is Steve, you and I have been victims of this, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses. Yes.
Try to get your attention.
I didn't.
That's talking about the minor estate. Remember, the Cesta KV Act was created in 1666. And that's what that's talking about, in my opinion. Pretended offenses or color of law. And that's what I'm dealing with right now in the federal courts. And that's talking about the minor estate.
I'll get you 1 second, Steve. Has anybody ever here taken a real US of A flag with no gold fringe into court with them? No? Okay. Why would we need to do that? Ask your question and make your statement, we'll get back to it.
I just want to mention, last time I talked to Randy Cotton, he told me that since they transferred me from city to county, I can sue him for false imprisonment. I think you're back with him. Details on that.
So am I correct in assuming you didn't give them jurisdiction?
Right. Yeah.
Why would that be? What did you do or not do that caused them to take you from city to county?
Well, they were following county charges on me. They took me to the city overnight. They lost my paperwork, so I had to stay yesterday. Then they went to county. So I signed everything without prejudice. So I didn't give them my name.
That's good. So what's 10,000 times? He says a lot. What's 10,000 times 60 minutes per hour times 24 hours per day? You were there how many days total?
A day and a half.
Day and a half. So 30 hours at 600,000 is 18 million. And there may be a way to actually see that come to pass. And that would be great, because then one or two of the police officers may lose their jobs. The city may lose its bond, because the city is going to have to pay, the insurance is going to have to pay it, right? So that's good news.
How did this become so rampant? It's just greed, right?
Well, it's control. Okay. Does anybody here have a little plot of land that they think they own and there's a house on it? 1, 2, 3. What would you do to defend that if someone tried to, you had a tenant and they tried to usurp your rights as owner of that home? You would defend it, right? Well, the King of England felt he owned all of the colonies. And we, the upstarts, were saying, we want to be free from you. Because you're a mean landlord. You're beating us up, you're turning off the heat, we're cold. There's no running water. It's worse than that. They're transporting us beyond seas. So I can understand why the king to this day is not wanting us to be free. So they create a legal fictional system to to afflict us using bribes, bar members, legislatures to create laws, which we talked about earlier, pretended legislation. So that's why I can understand why he gets upset. How dare we think that we don't have to give him his due? Yes, Joe.
You know, the conviction rate here in Texas
Conviction rate in Texas.
is 99.6, 99.8.
99.8.
Once we lost the right to a trial of our peers and started having a trial from anybody who happened to wander by or
Start over, Joe, they can't hear you.
Once we lost the right to a trial by our peers, which the founding fathers defined as somebody knew you. They knew your heart, they knew your mind, they knew if you were a good guy, if you were, a habitual bad guy. Once they started just taking the jury names from the voter rolls, these are people, they don't know you. And the prosecutor and the cops, they can lie, they can mislead. And, you look at a policeman, and he's got a nice starch uniform on, he turns and he lies right to your face. And then the prosecutor has got a nice suit on, and he lies to your face. And the judge basically tells, if you ask him, do you allow the police to lie? And he'll say yes. It's up to the jury to determine whether or not they're lying. We lost our right to a trial by jury. We now have a hollow, obscene mockery of what the founding fathers intended us to have at all levels. Are you aware of the 80-20 rule? 80% of the mass in the universe is contained in 20% of the stars. 80% of the water on Earth is contained in, fresh water on Earth is contained in 20% of the rivers. The 80-20 rule is a mathematical rule that exists throughout the government, or throughout the universe. Well, as you look at the amount of money that has been swindled off from us, we've been scammed out of all that we've worked and earned, guess what? The 80-20 rule applies. 80% of everything the American people have worked and earned and generated has been skimmed off, stolen, and misappropriated. And you now live with a so-called government. It's a government in name only. A congressman said that. It is no longer our government. You no longer have the right to the process of law. You have the right to a hollow, obscene mockery of justice.
And I would say the best way to cure that is to reestablish ourselves as men on the land. Because if I demand this Constitution being the supreme law of the land, unless I'm on the land, guess what they can do? Use the Gold Fringe Maritime Law to take our life, liberty, and property. So as long as there's a piece of insulation between me and the land, they get, even just as recently as a few months ago, took me for over almost 24 hours on a trip in a cruiser.
Does it never end?
And I said that to the police. I said, I'm educating them as we're going down. I'm like, all right, let me take advantage of this. And when they did book me into jail 3 months ago, the normal booking agent can't wait to get back to there whenever they do. I had him at wrapped detention, and the 2 or 3 prisoners that were in the holding cells were asking me questions of what to do in their case, and the cop was listening because I was telling them everything I'm telling you now here. And the police officer, the CO, was listening at wrapped detention, and I had been there for months, so they knew who I was and knew my character and reputation. So now all of a sudden, when I advised him of Statute 31, District of Columbia, that the judge got a commission, he knows that judge. He's seen which judge sentenced you to this prison, this jail today. He knows them all. He's seen all the injustice. But as they said to me as we were walking down the hall, looking straight ahead, Nelson, what do we do? The CEOs were asking you what, and before this meeting's over today, I want those of you listening and those that are here, if you haven't read the Northwest Ordinance, which is the third of the four organic law, Section 14, write that down. Section 14. Section 14, just look it up, you can find it in 12 seconds. Section 14 of the Northwest Ordinance is where it begins. The first three articles right after that is where you will begin to read our guarantees. Can somebody pull it up real quick for me on their cell phone? Section 14, it's important. Glenn and I use this in our work all the time. It's the things Joe has been saying. Jury of our peers, judicial proceedings according to the course of the common law. Okay, Glenn, would you like to read it or shall I?
It is hereby
Northwest Ordinance, right?
Yeah.
Northwest Ordinance.
It is hereby ordained and declared by the authority aforesaid that the following articles shall be considered as articles of compact between the original states and the people, and the states in said territory, and forever remain unalterable unless by common consent, to wit. So, it actually, the Northwest Ordinance defines the nature of federal jurisdiction in federal territory. And when you look at the District of Columbia, it's the nature of federal jurisdiction in federal territory.
How long before the Constitution was proposed was this written?
3 months.
So the Founding Fathers, 3 months before they got together to do. Thank you, Steve. I thought he had more to say. 3 months before this Constitution was agreed upon in September of 1787, 3 months prior, same Congress comprised and wrote the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. And in it, they wrote these words. Could you fill that up again? Make it so I can read it. Section 14. Just let's concentrate on the first few lines. It is hereby ordained, a religious term, and declared, a kingly term, can I say it, please? That the following articles, notice the small a, what does that mean? It's common law. The following articles shall be considered as articles of compact. Again, small c, common law, between the original states and the people and states in the said territory. The word T here is small. So that's talking about the land, all of the land, not just that's it.
That's right.
Not just the land of the colonies, which are now states, not just the Northwest Territory, upper Illinois, Michigan, Indiana, parts of Minnesota, Ohio. In the said territory, the original states and the people, small p, and states in the said territory. Those are the ones that are going to be created in the future, say California. So Glenn's point is, I believe that this clause here applied to California before it became a state. And when it became a state, it now reverted to the states in the said territory, because prior to that, it was a territory owned by Congress. And so, as well as the rest of the Appalachians before they became states. And forever remain unalterable unless by common consent. Now, what does common consent mean? Does that mean we all have to get together to vote? That we have to assign legislators to vote for us to go against this? What's common consent mean? Why is it important to you, Steve, and me? What's common consent? Don't some of us say when they were approached by the government officials, we do not consent? Why do we say that? I don't consent. Why should that have any bearing on what happens?
They need us to consent in order for them to.
Okay, but that's easy to say, but where is it that you, it's right up here. See it in green? Section 14. Unless by common consent. If you're one of the people, it's between the original, this is Articles of Compact. That means there's an agreement, an engagement between all of us. The states, yes, but we the people, man to man, groups to groups, that's okay too, but it has to be common consent. So when we do not consent, the word common consent, I would have read that way back 3 years ago to mean, oh, we have to get everybody to send legislatures and we all agreed to send them, and now they're deciding what's going to happen to me. No. It's right here, Section 14 of the Northwest Ordinance. That's where we stand, where I did not, by common law, consent to being a driver. I did not consent to being tried in your court. I did not consent to coming into your municipal court because you typed the name of the judge on a piece of paper. I did not consent. You don't have my common consent. What will happen is when we buck the system is going to say, okay, Steve, you don't want to consent? Well, here's what's going to happen to you. But now look at what the potential reward is. When we learn to sign all of our documents without prejudice, that keeps the government in the game as far as having to pay us damages. The problem is they can create as much paper money as they want. The damages, they just keep damaging everybody. Now we're starting to see a little bit of relief. But do we let them continue on with their crimes? The answer is no. So how do we prosecute them? That's an issue. Glenn just talked about how his method caused the Supreme Court Justice of the state of Texas in the last 3 months, if I'm not mistaken time-wise, had to resign. That's a win. But he never gave them an inch. That's why enemies in war, in peace, friends. That police officer down in Bedford that I'm talking to, he claims to be my friend. But when push comes to shove and he has to decide, is he going to obey this Constitution and his oath? When I show him these things, so I have to educate. We have to educate. We have to educate the law enforcement. They're not all bad. While I was talking to him, he told me that he said, I got into the police work because I didn't want to be a bully, but I want to help people. What would typically the response from us be to somebody who said that, who's wearing a gun? Not likely, right? from our experience. I can tell you what happened, and I can teach and explain how we can know the truth, and the truth will set us free. You know what happened to me when he spoke those words? I sensed the electricity of the Holy Spirit in me as he spoke those words. And I told that man, Officer Pinelli, I said, I believe you. And you know why I believe you? Because the Spirit of God just testified what you said is the truth. That's how we can walk as sons of God, by knowing the truth, and the truth will set us free. Now, I'm not saying he still won't betray me, but I can tell you that what he told me was the truth. He became a police officer and didn't want to be a bully. So guess what he gets? He gets the honor of another visit from me and Darren to educate him further. And I told him, I said, you know, do you have children? He said, yes. I said, wouldn't it be nice to kind of let them know about the few things we've been talking about and let them grow up not under the same deception that we all have been? And he agreed. So now, I invited him to this meeting. Whether he ever shows up or not is another question. He may have to come undercover. So he's not ratted out. Are we in Bedford right now?
Yeah.
You don't have to take off work.
He might have to unless he works the night shift. Always?
Yeah, he's there every time I go there.
On Tuesdays? Well, I'll interview him. So we're about done today. It is, let's go one or two more things. It's 12:30. We'll call it quits at 20 up, okay? All right.
It's 2:30.
Oh, what time did I say 12? Okay. I'm on California time, I guess. Okay, so here's 14. So we're going to go back to, oh no, I did want to read these Articles 1 and 2. Listen to these words. We'll close with Articles 1, 2, and 3 of the Northwest Ordinance, which, to repeat, is part of the organic law, the 4 documents. It's the third of the 4 organic laws. I'm going to ask Glenn to read Articles 1 and 2, and then go back, and then we'll talk about a few of the items, and then we'll call it quits after that.
Okay, we're not done doing the Declaration of Independence either, but anyways,
Correct.
Article 1 is no person demeaning himself in a peaceable and orderly manner shall ever be molested on account of his mode of worship or religious sentiments in said territory. Article 2 is the inhabitants of said territory shall always be entitled to benefits of writ of habeas corpus and of trial by jury and of proportionate representation in the people of the legislature, of the people in the legislature, and of judicial proceedings according to the course of the common law. All persons shall be bailable unless for capital offenses, where the proof shall be evident or the presumption great. All fines shall be moderate, and no cruel or unusual punishment shall be inflicted. No man shall be deprived of his liberty or property but by the judgment of his peers or the law of the land. And should the public exigencies make it necessary for the common preservation to take any person's property or to demand his particular services, full compensation shall be made for the same. And in the just preservation of the rights and property, it is understood and declared that no law ought ever to be made or to have force in said territory that shall in any manner whatever interfere with or affect private contracts or engagements, bona fide and without fraud previously formed.
Could you discuss why this here relates to the said territory and it applies to us today?
What, about the contracts?
Yeah. No, it's understood and declared, just preservations of rights and property. Which is kind of what you're saying with your tax situation.
Well, you have a right to enter into a contract, but you also have a right not to enter into a contract.
Right. And if they're claiming there was a contract, but it was through fraud.
Right.
Right.
Right, exactly. If there's fraud involved, So anyways,
So why would Article 2 under Section 14 of the Northwest Ordinance apply to your case in Texas land today?
well, for a bunch of reasons, because there was a judicial proceeding, but it wasn't according to the course of the common law. It was a clerk, a bought and paid for clerk masquerading as a judge. It was no man should be deprived of his liberty or property, but by the judgment of his peers or the law of the land. And it was a judge alone. And so there was no jury, although juries around here are a bunch of brain dead idiots, anyways. And so it had nothing to do with the law of the land or common law. They basically stole my land with their forced rendition.
And this is why I think the King of England and his heirs and all his bar member buddies, they feel that we, to this day, stole their colonies from them. And they want it back. And they'll use fraud, coercion, commit crimes, and bribe legislators, and dumb down the population if it suits their purposes. And so with that, is there any other final questions or comments from anybody that you think would be for the good of the order? Okay. Well, I thank everybody for attending today. I hope it was enlightening and you had a few new pieces of information on how to strategize in your own animation of liberty. So,
Also, tell everybody about our Wednesday night meeting.
we do have a Wednesday night meeting at 7 p.m. in Dallas, Texas, which lasts for 2 hours. There's no charge. You can make a donation if you wish. The room costs us $25 for 2 hours. And how would they get in touch with you, Darren? By email?
Yeah.
And what is your email?
Brad Swain. The email is bradswain81 @gmail.com. BRADSWAIN81 @gmail.com. Also, we want to start always going to the main entry areas when we come and we leave. If you could, that'd be great.
Right. There you go, Glenn.
Anybody got any comments?
I'll let you do it that way. I'm not responsible.
So Brian got a year?
Another month.
Yeah, we're locking up. We're now working on how to,
Perfect behavior.
right, we obviously don't have all the answers. None of us do. And they are constantly, the system is constantly, they'll violate the law in a heartbeat. In fact, I think, relish it. They laugh about it. They have drinks down at the club. The attorneys do. And they basically, it becomes a celebratory event that we took life, liberty, and property without due process of law again today. So they enjoy it. It's like a jackal or a hyena with their teeth in the prey. And the blood is coming off their fangs.
The prosecutor would object to everything that's really important to the law, and the judge always sustained everything.
Right, to work together. As Glenn likes to say, the prosecutor works for the state, the cops work for the state, and the judges work for the state.
The judge works for the county. I talked to a judge the other day, he said he was paid by the county.
I know, but it's still the state
It's
case.
still the state.
Okay.
And so this state is de facto, it's not genuine. And
Everybody has a vested interest that you're gonna lose.
if anybody out there is on email or watching and would like the information on the 2-cent mail process or the free certified mail, just email Darren. We'll get you in touch with 2-cent Ted from Charleston, West Virginia. And he makes his life work helping us to send mail out for little or no cost, saving us. I know one of our local people here, he's been saving $100 or $200 a week in certified mail costs.
Bill's got a question.
Oh, Bill, one more question.
I'm sorry. I'd like to make a request to announce that I would love to stay here and talk in more specific detail. Like the question has been a big question, and that what has happened, why did this happen? And this is what I want to cover, and I've been wanting to for months, is to discover and to explain and to work on and discuss the current problems today, even with Trump, because Trump has made a significant change. But we've got to go with much more to it than Trump. And that's what nobody understands. Nobody anywhere. And I would love to discuss it here. And a perfect example to start with will be, for instance, the city manager of Bedford is making over $250 million a year. Now I thought, whoa, that's too much. Well, no, it's not just Bedford. That's every damn city in the state. So we have problems, people, and it's time we start to discuss it. And I would love to give you much more detail about that specific control we do not have over government. We think we can have a meeting like we had today and cover some topics. Well, we solve those topic problems, but we haven't resolved the real problem. And the real problem is common sense. Common sense, a big problem. We never discuss common sense and what is it and why is it going downhill. Nobody here understands it's going downhill. I'd like to discuss why it's going downhill.